Hey, Larken Rose here. I'm constantly getting messages from people saying, did you see this article about anarchism or this video or about people bashing it and criticizing it and coming up with complaints about those who actually advocate freedom. And I don't normally respond to them on an individual basis because there's kind of an infinite number of people out there advocating the enslavement of mankind, also known as government. But somebody said, hey, you should do a response to Steve Shive's video. And I said, who the heck is that? And I went and looked it up and I thought, I actually will do a specific response to this just because Mr. Shives very succinctly expresses several of the most common, completely bogus, irrational complaints about freedom, about anarchism and voluntarism. So he wrote an article called 5 Stupid Things About Libertarians, or 5 Reasons Why Libertarians Are Stupid. I already forget the title. But it was insulting and it was about libertarians. Now he doesn't distinguish between politically active, like capital L libertarians, and just the general principle, but that's okay. So I'm going to address his 5 points. I'm not going to address them in the order he did them. I'll address them in reverse order of how important they are. The first is, he was saying, well, libertarianism is anachronistic. The people who believe in that, they just want to roll things back to the old days. I don't have much of a rebuttal for that because it isn't actually an argument. It's like saying, well, yeah, 2 plus 2 equaled 4 years ago, but now we're beyond that. Like, truth doesn't depend on what year you're in. And this thing that, you know, well, yeah, allowing other people to be in freedom, that's so passé, that's so quaint, but now we're all wise and progressive, and now we know that everyone should be violently dominated by the state. That's not an argument, so I don't have a rebuttal. Another thing he brings up is, well, libertarians put on airs, and they sound like pompous, and again, this isn't an argument. Like, someone can be right and sound pompous, or they can be wrong and sound pompous. Sounding pompous doesn't prove that they're wrong. And there's an aspect of this that is sort of funny because moral relativists, or people who pretend to be moral relativists, bring it up all the time. It's like, you talk as if you're right and everybody else is wrong. Well, yeah, duh. If I believe this and you believe that, obviously I think you're wrong, or I would believe this. And to go one step further, when people are complaining, oh, you think you're better than other people, I don't advocate the initiation of violence against anybody else. And yes, I do believe that makes me better than other people. Now, I used to be a statist. I used to think it's okay to advocate violence if you do it by way of the legal process and politics and voting and authority in government and all that. So I'm not necessarily saying I have better intentions, but now that I have outgrown that particular lie that I grew up with, my behavior is more moral than the vast majority of people on the planet, because the vast majority of people still believe in government, and by way of government they still advocate the enslavement of their fellow man, the extortion and violent domination of people who haven't threatened or harmed anyone. So yes, there is such thing as people who are morally superior and people who are morally inferior, at least in their behaviors. And to say otherwise, like, I wonder if Mr. Shives, if you went back in time and could meet some slave owners, would say, I'm not saying I'm better than you because I don't own other human beings. It's just, you know, your opinion is equally valid. No, it isn't. The opinion that it's okay to stomp on the self-ownership of other individuals is not equally valid to the opinion that you shouldn't do that you should leave people in freedom. Number 3, and this is about the most common one, libertarianism is naive to think that people left to their own devices will be good, and like a lot of people do, Mr. Shives assumes that people who are libertarians, or in my case anarchist, or whatever you want to call it, think that we don't need a government because everybody will be good without one. That's not at all the logic. That's not at all the reasoning. I don't even know anybody who actually believes that. However good or bad people are, and I've said this a billion times, but I'll say it again. However good or bad people are, it doesn't improve the situation to take some of those people and give them societal permission to violently dominate everybody else. And that's what government is. And to think that that's going to serve as a check against the imperfections of humanity, because yes, lots of people are negligent or malicious or untrustworthy or whatever, but it's and you see the religious nature of the belief in government, which I'll get to at the end of this video, in the fact that people say, I don't trust people, so we need government to keep people in line, which sort of implies that government is something else. Like it's some weird, mystical, magical thing. Even though if you ask people, well, what runs government? Well, people. Well, what people? Politicians. Well, are they wiser and more noble and caring than the rest of us? Well, no, they're usually a bunch of lying crooks. Okay, so we don't trust human beings, so what we should do is take some of the worst human beings among us and put them in a position of power where they can violently dominate everybody else, because that'll fix everything. That's one of the main arguments for statism, and it's totally loony. And so, but Mr. Shives makes the same mistake. You must trust everybody if you don't want government, and speaks of government as this magical, superhuman, all-powerful good guy that'll make sure we imperfect humans behave. Even though it always, always, always does the exact opposite, because it's inherently violent and coercive. That's what government is. So expecting that to make people civilized. Let's give those people permission to commit violence all over the place, because then we'll be less violent. Duh. Oh, and he also threw in that without government, the wealthy and powerful would be unaccountable. They could get away with doing anything. When's the last time you read a newspaper? The people in government who have the most wealth and the most power get away literally with mass murder. Who are they accountable to? Well, in a few years we can vote for their identical twin, and he may or may not win, and the exact same thing will happen anyway. Again, this is just wishful thinking among statists, hoping that government will be better than normal people, despite thousands and thousands of years of evidence to the contrary. That, oh, if you leave people in freedom, some people will get really powerful and dominate others. Yeah, that's called government. And the idea that we can't do away with government because what will happen will be government, basically. The worst case scenario that most statists come up with to predict the horrible consequences of not having a government is a perfect description of government. So, like, the worst case scenario is if we do away with government, we'll end up with government. Yeah, I agree. That's as bad as you can get. But no, we wouldn't. If people didn't imagine legitimacy to violent domination, people wouldn't put up with it. I've said this a million times. There's only one gang in the world with the ability to forcibly or to dominate 100 million armed Americans, and that's the gang that's duped those 100 million armed Americans into imagining an obligation to obey by making them believe in this superstition called authority. So they put up with it because they believe that the mythology that apparently Mr. Shives believes about representatives of the, they represent us and that there's consent of the governed and all the garbage to try to hide the fact that no, there's a ruling class and it violently dominates and robs everybody else. That's the reality, and that doesn't make us safer, it doesn't make us more civilized or anything else. So the idea that without a giant violent ruling class, there would be powerful people we couldn't control. Holy smokes, open a history book. Number 4, he opines that, oh, this libertarianism alienates people from the government. Oh dear, we have to be involved because the government is us, and more of the same bogus mythology. It's sort of like saying, come on, if we say the carjacker is bad, the good people might stop voting for a carjacker and might not be friends with the carjacker. Government is the enemy of the people. It is a parasite. It is a violent, dominating, inhuman, immoral beast that constantly initiates violence against all the productive people. And this idea that, oh, let's be buddies, we don't want to be alienated from that thing. Yes, I do. I absolutely want to be alienated from that thing as far as possible away from it. So it just sort of feeds into the thing that the government is us, which is, you hear all the time, it's just so ridiculous that anybody believes that. Like, you know that it gives commands. It says, you're going to give us this much money, we're going to call it taxes. You're going to do this, you're not going to do that. If you disobey any of our commands or laws, we're going to hurt you. And to say that we are the government is just as pathetic as slaves on a plantation saying, we are the slave owners. No, you're not. They boss you around and you obey or they hurt you. They're not you. If you really can't tell the difference between the people who have to obey or they get hurt and the people who give the orders, that's some pretty serious delusion you got going on in your head. And number 5, my favorite, is libertarians are selfish. They just want it their own way. And this, it just amazes me that anybody can argue this with a straight face. Because libertarianism, the non-aggression principle, what it says, the whole thing it says is, I own myself. I don't have the right to initiate violence against you. You don't have the right to initiate violence against me. I get to decide what is done with my life and my body and my energy and the fruits of my labor, and you get to decide what's done with yours. And when a statist comes along and says, you're selfish, what he's really and truly saying is, you over there who want to be in charge of what you earn and you produce, you're selfish. But I'm loving and caring when I advocate that the state forcibly deprive you of the fruits of your labor for what I want it to do. It really is that loony. When statists call libertarians or anarchists selfish, you're so selfish because you think you should be in charge of yourself, while I'm loving and caring because I want you enslaved. Mr. Shives, I want you to have absolute, complete control of your own life, the fruits of your own labor, your own time and energy. I want you to be completely free. Now tell me how selfish I am that I also want me to be free. You don't want either one of us to be free. You want a ruling class that violently dominates and extorts all of us and do what you want it to do with my money. That does not make you selfless and caring. That makes you A, a thug, and B, a coward. A thug because you advocate violence against millions of people you don't know, and B, you're a coward because you don't do it yourself. You vote for somebody else to do it for you, to rob people you don't know on your behalf, to spend their money on what you want, and you call it selfish when they say, you shouldn't rob me for what, you shouldn't steal my money for what you want. You spend your money on what you want. That's perfectly fine. That is the heart and soul of libertarianism, but you don't get to steal mine. Oh, you're so selfish. Talk about hypocrisy. It's just amazing. It's like a carjacker. Give me your car. And the guy says, no, you're so selfish. You won't share your car with me. Holy smokes. Mr. Shives, grow up. And the final point. That was his 5 points, but Mr. Shives is a very outspoken atheist, or pretends to be. And this is one of the main points I wanted to make here, because I don't know who first came up with the term state theist, but Mr. Shives is a shining example of a state theist. Once upon a time, I used to think the belief in government was analogous to a religion. I no longer think that. It's not an analogy. It is a religion. Mr. Shives, you are not an atheist. You believe in a God. You believe in a superhuman deity that has rights that mere mortals don't. And this deity that you believe in and you worship and you beg for, you pray to shower its blessings upon you and to smite your enemies, you imagine that its commandments are holy decrees and that anybody who disobeys, breaks the law, is a horrible sinner and criminal. Mr. Shives, your God is called government. And not only is it a mythical deity, your religion, the cult of state, is the most insane, destructive religion in the history of the world, with the highest body count by far among any religion, the most amount of oppression and violence and injustice and extortion and murder was committed in the name of your religion, Mr. Shives, and that religion is called government. And the funny thing is to hear atheists criticize people who believe in God. And I'm not a Christian, and I don't, the only reason I won't get into it, I don't call myself an atheist just because it usually implies some things that I don't believe. But I don't believe in what almost anybody calls God. But it's so funny to watch self-described atheists who will, logically attack somebody's belief in their God, and then turn around and use the exact same arguments in the other direction to justify their own belief in this mythical superhuman deity with the right to rule known as government. So, Mr. Shives, you're not an atheist, hate to break it to you, and you're basically out there advocating the enslavement of mankind and taking pride in your own subservience to a mythical deity. And unfortunately, the truth of the matter is, people who have done that are the ones who have been causing 99% of the oppression, injustice, suffering, and murder throughout human history. If you think you're all progressive and enlightened, maybe look up the book by R.J. Rummel, Death by Government, and see what your God has done to the human race.